8500. We will take calls in the order they are received. Pursuant to board policy, the board may limit individual comments to no more than 3 minutes and individual topics to 20 minutes. Please begin your comments by stating your name. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the board at this time. If you have a specific question that you would like answered, please call the VUSD call center between 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And the call center, these are our summer hours, and the call center number is 559-730-7300. And for the week of June 29th, the hours will be the usual 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The board asks that any public comment on an item listed on tonight's agenda be addressed at the time the item comes up for discussion by the board. Do we have any calls?
We do have a call. One moment, please. Caller, go ahead.
Is this on YouTube yet?
Your call is on YouTube, yes.
Hello?
It's on Zoom.
Yes, it is.
It hasn't popped up on YouTube yet. I called just to see if you guys are still having a meeting.
Oh, yes, the meeting has started.
Okay, but it's not live for anybody to watch.
It is running already.
Okay, I'm just saying I don't see it, and my wife doesn't see it, and a lot of other people don't see it.
It just started. Can you try again? Maybe refresh?
Yeah, I'm refreshing. So I'm sorry. I'll try calling back, but yeah.
But were you wanting to provide public comment?
I don't know what anything is right now, so
Oh, okay.
Let me just try to get on so I know what's going on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Other public comment? Are we waiting for him to call back? Do we have any other public comments?
It appears so. They're talking with Delia, Ms. Smart at the moment. Please stand by.
I have a question. The 119 people that are on this Zoom, are those staff? Is that public? Do we know?
Both.
I just didn't know that there was a public way that you could get on as well. No, thank you.
While we're waiting, I want to do the consent agenda. Does any board member want to pull any items? Dr. Vasquez?
Yes, I would like to pull enclosure number 7 and enclosure number 11. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to approve the remainder? I have
Moved.
a motion by trustee Naylor, a second by trustee Fulmer. What is your vote, trustee Gamoyen? Trustee Guerrero?
Yes.
Trustee Foster? Trustee Fulmer? Mr. Fulmer? Is a yes. Ms. Gamoyen is a yes. Trustee Naylor is a yes. You thought I was going to forget you, didn't you? And Dr. Vasquez was a,
Yes, thank you.
all right, number 7. Dr. Vasquez, your mic is on, off.
Sorry, hit the wrong button. If somebody could please explain to me how these came about. This is just end of service. This is part of budget cuts. This is end of the year numbers combination.
Mr. Crabtree, can I comment?
Yes, please do.
This is resignations and retirements.
Thank you. Move to approve.
Motion by Dr. Vasquez, a second by Mr. Fulmer. My vote is yes. Mr. Guerrero,
Yes.
Mr. Foster, Mr. Fulmer,
Yes.
Trustee Gamoyen, Trustee Naylor,
Yes.
and Dr. Vasquez was a yes. So those last 2 votes, Mrs. Smart, were all in favor with 1 board member absent, that being Mr. Foster on both those votes. Number 11,
Yes, my question here is, this is unclear to me. Does that mean that there's a cap of only 2 students for this this request? Or is that just what we're looking at right now? Okay, if you have more students, is this covering it as well?
This
And
is just
enclosure
for
11?
2 students. I don't know the specifics on that, but I can get you more information.
So this is only authorizing to work with up to 2 students and 2 specific students, is that correct?
At
And so
this
if we have
time,
another student, you'll have to bring it back to get approval for more students. This is not for the program. This is for those 2 students specifically,
correct.
even though we don't have information on those 2 students, but that's what it is, those 2 students. Okay, thank you. Move to approve.
I have a motion by Dr. Vasquez,
Second.
second by Mr. Guerrero. My vote is a yes. Mr. Guerrero is a yes. Mr. Foster is not with us. Mr. Fulmer,
Yes.
Ms. Gamoyen,
Yes.
Trustee Naylor,
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez is a yes. Same vote. We got all in favor. Mr. Foster is missing in action. All right, that finishes the consent agenda. Are we back to public comment?
Yes.
One moment, please. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, members of the school board, my name is Melissa Brewer. I have students at Hurley and Ridgeview. And the reason I'm calling tonight is I wanted to discuss with you public comment time. In our last school board meeting, public comment time was cut short on important matters to our stakeholders, which includes parents and teachers. It was requested by board member Lucia Vasquez on behalf of the Visalia Unified Parent Group that is working together that something be done to accommodate public comment time remotely so that all parents have an opportunity to participate and share their concerns. Superintendent Ravelin stated that she would look into it. The public has not seen action on this request, as evidenced by the way we are communicating tonight for public comment. Considering Board President Crabtree's comment about hearing one parent complaint, he has heard them all in layman's terms, what is the board and superintendent doing to assure that public comment is heard and valued? Has there been action on this? And how can we be certain that we are calling in at the right time for public comment when things move so quickly? Technology does slow the process down for people to call in to find where they are on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments?
There are no other comments at this time.
All right, then we'll move on.
Hold on, please. There is one call coming in. Did I hang up on her? Go ahead, please.
Hello and good evening, members of the school board. My name is Nellie Freeborn, and I have children. As the board superintendent and staff are making plans to return for the fall school year, I ask that you think about what parents are saying they need. Parents and teachers are anxious and overwhelmed. In March, I placed my first call to this board and asked for consideration to provide the children of Visalia Unified School District teacher-led distance learning. Parents have already begun to work, and if they have not already, how will the district address parents that are returning to work and will not be able to be home to help children distance learn? How will school sites and teachers hold children accountable? Children have fallen behind and will continue to slide if the district does not require teacher-led instruction. Working parents are not able to create a structured school day for the same reasons our own teachers express their own concerns about returning to the school site, their school site. In planning, I understand that committees have been formed, and I would like to know how is SLC being represented in those committees, and I would like to see that communicated out via email to the parents of SLC students. In 2021 and the 2021 school year, I will support my children as I always have in a typical parental role. However, I am not able to support them as their teacher. And I hope that the board, superintendent, and staff consider that, because I am one of many parents who will be working if we're lucky. I also ask, will the district utilize the summer months to implement a pilot program as a test case to see how classes can be set up? We ask you, please help our students, help your teachers, and help your parents. These are your constituents, and I hope that you're listening to us, because up until now, we have not felt heard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have other public comment? Are we waiting for more public comment?
Ms. Smart is taking phone calls at this time. There's no further calls on general public comment.
All right, we'll move on to enclosure number 17. We'll open a public hearing, VUSD proposed budget. Reading, this is a first read. Mr. Hernandez.
Good evening, President Crabtree, members of the board, Dr. Ravelin, Nathan Hernandez, Admin Services. And this is the first reading and first draft of our 2020-21 VUSD budget. And so I'm going to be joined by Ms. Villarreal, and she's going to go through some of the general fund and restricted budgets, and we'll move through this item together. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so some of the information that you're going to hear tonight is similar to what we discussed at the May Revise update. So we're going to go through that pretty quickly, and then we're going to discuss the district's budget for next year. One thing that we do know is that this budget is going to change. We're already hearing that the Senate and Assembly have agreed to a budget, and it is not like the governor's budget in the May revision. So there will be some negotiations and some changes when the state adopts their budget. We expect to see that by this Friday so that the state can take action next Monday. So we'll go through and look at the state budget, review the district's general fund, and then we will look to what the next steps are in our budgeting process. So as we shared at the May revision, we had 11 good years, and now we find ourselves into a recession created by the pandemic and the economic shutdown. And so we knew for some time that this could be coming, and obviously you never really know exactly what's going to cause the next recession. So this did take us by a little bit of a surprise, but we over that time period also took steps in our budget to try to prepare for this. And so we're probably in better condition than we were as we entered the last recession, but still we have some work to do. And so the governor's May revision these are the assumptions that we've used to build this budget. Assumed a $54 billion shortfall, part of that in the current fiscal year, and $32 billion in next fiscal year. But we know, as I said, that's going to change because of the timing for the income tax payments coming into the state. That was shifted to July. When we came into the year in April, it looked like we were going to be ahead of prior fiscal year revenues. But then again, through the shutdown and the shift, that looks like we're going to have to wait until July to see what the actual results are and what the state budget will look like. And so there'll be some adjustments to the state budget likely in August. And so the state is using all of the tools that they have to balance the budget for next year. They're going to use their budget stabilization account, their reserve account, all 16 billion over 3 years. They're going to use one-time money from the CARES Act federal funds, and then they're going to also propose cuts from the governor's May revision, proposing cuts to schools, 10% reduction in our LCFF funding, as well as to other areas of the state budget. So as we look to the May revision for our district assumptions, we're assuming that our LCFF funding is cut by the 10%. It's effectively a 7.92% with the cost of living adjustment that was added before the cut. That's about $23 million in our unrestricted budget. We did include a portion of the Federal CARES Act funding, $8.36 million. That's federal dollars, so those are in our restricted funds. We did get some good news in pensions where the state is applying future payments to the next 2 years. And so there's a reduction in STRS, and the PERS is actually an increase over the current year, but it's less than what was projected in January. And then we have some specific cuts to categorical programs, after school, CTE, adult school and preschool. Some of those for CTE, for example, are up to 50% in the proposal. And then the return of the deferrals. So deferrals are a cash challenge for us because it's not a cut where they don't reduce our revenues, but the state sends us cash. In this case, for next year, April, May, and June, instead of sending us those cash payments in those months, they would send them to us in July. And so in order for us to make payroll for those months and to pay our vendors, we have to borrow from other funds internally, and we have to look to outside borrowing if we don't have enough cash to meet those costs. And there are no adjustments to our federal funds in this budget. The folks that we look to, the county office hasn't advised that we should reduce our federal funds budgets, so our title funds. At this point, that could come later. The federal government, though, tends to run a deficit, and so they may fund these as they currently are and for the next year. As I mentioned, there's still many unknowns. We'll talk a little bit later about returning to school in the fall and what that will look like. The budget at the state level is changing every day, but we know that there will be changes in August as well. The state's decisions on how they will budget for next year will impact additional one-time funds from federal funds. We'll also provide information on how will be funded for next year for our enrollment or ADA or some hold harmless agreement as has been proposed, and then any additional flexibility for restricted programs and how we can spend those ending balances. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Villarreal, and she is going to jump into the general fund budget highlights.
So continuing on with the good news, let's look over at our district revenues. So total or general fund revenues come to $343.3 million. LCFF is $273.4 million, and this includes $44.3 million in supplemental and concentration funds. Looking at our federal funds, that we have $28.2 million, and this includes the one-time funds of $8.4 million in the CARES Act funds. Our other state revenue comes to $29.7 million, and this includes the $19 million in state on behalf payments for pensions. In our other local revenue, we have $12.0 million. Our average daily attendance has increased by 233, bringing our ADA to 28,265. And our district reserves are at a 9%. As a reminder, our district board goal is 15% for our reserves, but due to the funding reductions we've seen, we are now at a 9% for our reserves. So this slide just shows our revenue in a chart form. And so we wanted to compare the 1920 and 2021 year funding. And so at first glance, it looks like there's just an increase of $500,000. But if you look closely at the LCFF funds, you'll see that there's a significant reduction there of 21.39 million. And in federal funds, there's an increase there, but that's due to the one-time funds for the CARES Act of $8 million. And then there is an increase in other state funds, and that's $12 million, and that's due to the pension costs that we're seeing as well. So moving on to our expenditures, the total expenditures in our budget right now is 437.6 million. For our general fund specifically, that's 344.8 million. And what's included in that budget is our step and column costs of 4.41 million, a decrease of 1.1 million in our pension costs. And then some reductions were made in the departmental discretionary funds. And then the staffing reductions that were done back in March to balance our 1920 deficit are also included in the 2021 budget. So this slide just shows, again, the chart of all of our expenditures. And what this does basically highlights that the majority of our budget is allocated to our employee salaries and benefits. So currently our budget is 88.8% for employee salaries and benefits. And that percentage has increased, and that's due to the increase in the pension payments, and then also a decrease in the discretionary funds, which is mostly in our materials and supplies. So this slide is just the summary of the slides we just went over. It's our general fund summary for restricted and unrestricted funds. So again, going over the revenue, our revenue does include the one-time CARES Act funds of $8.36 million. It does not include the one-time CARES Act funds from state allocation. And so our total revenue is 343.30 million. Looking at our expenditures, it does not include our salary and benefit savings from our proposed tentative agreement that Mrs. Somavia will present tonight. So that puts us at a net decrease in fund balance of $1.5 million. So for our other restricted funds, the main thing you want to look at here is just showing that everyone's basically living within their means, meaning that their expenditures do not exceed their revenues. If you look at Measure A, there are 0 funds allocated there for revenue, and that's because we're issuing bonds in the current year and we have expenditures in the following year. And then for our county school facility fund, we receive those funds, the state funds, in the current year. And again, we have expenditures planned in the 2021 budget. But other than that, again, all our other funds are balanced. And now I will pass it over to Mr. Hernandez to bring you more great news.
So as we just showed in the restricted and unrestricted budgets, it does show just a slight decrease in our fund balance, so slight deficit. But again, this includes one-time funding from the CARES Act, which is a little over $8 million. So it would be a larger deficit without those one-time funding, without the one-time funds included. So I want to talk more about the unrestricted side of the budget. This is where the majority of our expenditures are. And you can see the reduction there from 1920 to 2021 in our LCFF revenues. We are still projecting a slight deficit for 1920. We have taken action to address that for 2021, and that was prior to the news of the cuts to our unrestricted budget. So the 2021 unrestricted side of the budget shows a deficit of about 12.5 billion. And if we roll that forward in our multi-year projection, that creates a cumulative deficit of just over $61 million. So this budget would not be approved by our county office because we don't have a fund balance of $61 million. So this is not the MYP that we're going to present when we present our budget to the county and when we come back to the board on the 23rd for approval. So in order to show a positive fund balance and to ensure that we can meet our minimum reserve, we're going to have to show some reductions in that multi-year projection. And so we go back to those guiding directives that we've used in budget reductions in the past, and that's to preserve our instructional programs and opportunities for students, trying to keep that's as far away from classroom as possible, ensuring both our short-term and long-term fiscal solvency, ensuring that our multi-year projection leaves us in a positive balance, and then apply any actions that affect employees' salaries and benefits equitably. And so, as we talked about, there were some reductions that were made coming into this budget year to balance the budget so that we would have a balanced budget for 2021. Again, that was prior to shutdown. And some of those reductions were restructuring of LCAP programs. We had a budget study session where we discussed some of those changes in March. That was resulted in savings of about a little over $4.5 million. We also had some general fund department restructure and reductions that included both salary and discretionary budgets. That was a little over $4 million. And then we've eliminated the transfer for our other post-employment benefits through 2023. So that was a savings of about $1.7 million. So over $10 million in reductions coming into the year. Again, that was prior to the announcement in the May revise of the 10% reduction in our LCFF funding. So we did include some new reductions in this budget, and that's why it doesn't show a deficit of 23 million. We eliminated the annual contribution that we make for textbook adoptions of just over $3 million. Instead of making that contribution annually, we'll set aside a portion of our ending fund balance because we still need to adopt those textbooks in the future. We moved the payment of the COP, the Certificate of Participation, from the general fund to state facilities funds. We've received reimbursements from the state. And so we'll, as we planned, we'll start making payments out of that fund. We had 10% reductions across all department budgets, unrestricted budgets. That includes the board and superintendent's budgets. We did that mostly in materials and supplies and travel and conference budgets. And then additional reductions to the LCAP programs. And in these areas, because they're discretionary areas and not personnel, there were things like replacement of technology, professional development, all things that we know we need to bring back into the budget as we come out of this recession. So we still have a balance of $12.5 million that needs to be addressed, balance the budget for 2021. And so, as we discussed, almost 90% of our budget is personnel. So we know that we can't cut materials and supplies to balance this budget. We're going to have to continue to look at programs and restructuring and personnel cost, as well as working with our bargaining units for items that are negotiable. There's a tentative agreement on the agenda tonight that's not included in this budget. So when we come back on the 23rd, we'll include that as well. I think that's probably has close to $3.5 million in additional savings, which will reduce the deficit further. And then, we'll use our one-time funds as they're available. We know we're going to have one-time costs for returning back to school. But if there are one-time funds available from the federal funds, from the CARES Act, we'll use those to balance the budget as well, and any use of reserves. And so our multi-year projection in a couple of weeks will look a little bit different. It'll look more like what you see here, where we've taken some actions to show that we're planning to make some additional cuts and maintain a reserve ending fund balance of about 6%, so that our budget will be approved by the county. Next steps, the Budget Conference Committee hearings have already been held. The Senate and Assembly have agreed to a budget. Now they need to negotiate with the governor to have a budget that the legislature can vote on by next Monday, which means they'd have to have it available and published by Friday. So we expect to see that at the end of this week. We'll come back to the board on the 23rd with any changes that we can include in our budget before that time, and then we'll come back in August with a revision to the budget based on the state's actual adopted budget. So with that, we can conduct the public hearing and take any questions.
Have we conducted the public hearing? Do I need to close, Nathan, before we go into questions, or do questions first? Is there any public comment?
There are no calls at this moment. If you'd like to wait a moment, I'll let you know if there are any calls.
I'll come back to you. Is there any board member comments? Okay, then we'll wait just a minute or two to see if we get any public calls.
There are no phone calls regarding this item.
All right, then we'll move on. Enclosure number 18 has been pulled. Enclosure number 19, update on COVID. Dr. Ravlin?
John, do you need to close the public comment?
I do need to close that
Hearing.
before I move on. You're right. Thank you. It is closed.
Okay.
We just need a moment for the presentation to appear on the screen. Good evening, President Crabtree and members of the board and assistant superintendents. Tonight is an update on our COVID-19 planning and our what we know as of this moment for reopening plans for the fall semester. I'm not going to go through everything that we covered at the last meeting, but this is an informational item to give you updates. So as a quick review, we have over 29,000 students in our K-12. We have over 2,000 students in our adult school that we're still servicing even through the summertime. And these people are supported by over 3,000 staff members, and we have approximately 35,000 K-12 parents. So when we send out a Blackboard message via email or telephone, text and such, it's reaching at least 35,000 people. And so we want to be mindful of those numbers because we're a very large district as we go through and learn more about where we are right now. So right now, our county is in what they call stage 2.5 of the 4-part California roadmap to reopening. And if you'll notice on that, schools are allowed to open now with modifications. And the modifications will be going over soon. We hope that our county will be able to move into stage 3. From what I understand right now, we are not at the point to do that fully, but there have been some baby steps towards going that way. And as with all of this information, it's changing on a daily, sometimes hourly basis. So we have to keep up on not only what is happening with the schools, but with the county and businesses and such that are around us, and work very closely with our county health officer while following state guidelines. So again, schools can open, but with modifications, and we'll go into those in some more details. As we move into stage 3, many of the counties in the state, if they're approved, will be doing that in June 12th. Some counties are more reserved and more cautious and taking greater steps towards moving into different stages than others. But one of the things that may be helpful for us is the fitness facilities, because as we talk about PE classes and athletics and such, looking at fitness facilities for conditioning, when that is allowed to happen in Tulare County and we can move in that direction, that may assist us in supporting how we would go about bringing back student athletes for conditioning. So looking at that as well, I'm not going to cover that area tonight, but that is something also that the California Department of Public Health has made available to the public. So on Friday, so this is all brand new. Some of it is what we expected and what Superintendent Tony Thurman sort of foreshadowed as would be coming out. On Friday, the COVID-19 industry guidance for school and school-based programs was released. It is not a lengthy document. However, the items in that document we're bound to follow those as a school district. That is state mandates. Even though it says it's guidance, it's from the California Department of Public Health, and we need to follow that in conjunction with working with our local county health officer, who can also apply more restrictions to us or the county if need be. Yesterday only, a large document, I think it's about 50 pages or so, from the California Department of Education came out, and that is the document there called Stronger Together. It gives much more educational scenarios and variables and options for us to think about as educators in regards to instructions. But it mirrors the health and sanitation and safety standards of the California Department of Public Health. The two entities worked very closely together so that the documents would support each other. So those are what this conversation is framed about. And it is important that we follow those guidelines, which again may change. So we have to be open to being resilient and flexible during this time. Our guiding principles have not changed, but just as a reminder, the most important is the health, safety, and privacy of our students, staff, and families. And as we're going through this, it's about students, but it's also about our staff members. And everybody has different viewpoints on what we should do and what they would like us to do. But I just remind people that we work within the frameworks that we have been provided by the state. And so that's kind of our parentheses that we need to work within as we plan to move forward. So we're doing our scenario planning. We are still planning and hoping that we can open up full traditional school setting and return to what people feel is normal, because that is our comfort level. We think that's probably what most of our community will want, but we know that at this point, it doesn't seem like we'll be able to do that, at least not at the beginning. So we hope for that, and things may change to go towards that, but it doesn't seem like from the guidance that we received, which I'll go into again, those details, that we're going to be able to do that right now. We also, what it seems like right now is the most feasible for our planning is a hybrid model, meaning that some of the students are at school, maybe half, and some are learning at home, and that they have alternating schedules. And those schedules could take a variety of shapes and forms, but not everybody would be able to be at school at the same time with the restrictions and guidelines that we've been given at this time. We also know that the California Department of Public Health has told us, you better develop a plan for repeated closures, meaning that if there's an outbreak in a classroom, we may have to shut down a classroom, we may have to shut down a grade level, we may have to shut down a wing of a school, a whole school, or an area of town, an area of the district. So as we're planning, even though we think it's most likely we'll be in a hybrid scenario in August, we don't know that, because we're going to hope we can open up full traditional school, but we also know outbreaks could happen and we might have to go in another direction. So as we're going through this, know that all of our committees and our conversation are still looking at all the scenarios, and we're not going to make any final decisions for probably 6 weeks as to like how we will open school up. We're just not at that point, and we don't want to make promises that we can't fulfill, or we don't want to plan on something and be so structured that we're not open to something else should we be able to facilitate that. So here's some of the things we need to think about. This one graphic is nice. It's from the Sacramento County Office of Ed, but it aligns perfectly with the guidelines that we need to follow. And I think the difficult thing in planning, and as we get into our classrooms, is we have to plan for 6 feet of physical distancing. And they're telling us that we need to do that. This is from the health department again, whether we're in the classroom, whether we're in the hallways, whether we're out on the playgrounds, you know, sports activities if you're conditioning. And so when we talk about this, some of it seems very difficult. Like, how do you in a hallway ensure 6 feet of social distancing? That's not an easy thing to do. Some of the recommendations, if you're someone who's going to dive into those documents, they're talking about having scheduled start times in shifts, like students would come to school in shifts depending on their grade level. You know, for families, that probably isn't very feasible. So we're looking at how can we uphold these recommendations and guidelines to the best of our ability, but still be practical. So there's a lot to work through there. And as we think about this, we know that many of our families will need childcare, so we're working with community partners. Because if we're on a hybrid model and not everybody's at school at the same time, working families, including our own staff, are going to need support. So we have community partners who are looking into how they might be able to support families and have childcare at alternative places. They won't probably be able to use our school sites because we're gonna, you know, with the 6 feet of social distancing, we have to spread everybody out. We are also having conversations about how can we keep families on the same track. So if I have a child who's in elementary school and one in middle and one in high school, I probably can't manage and juggle a scenario where they're all on a different schedule. So how can we keep the family units together and make it easier on the families to support them? Again, we have to follow the guidance of the health department and work with our county health officer. So that's very important. You'll see some other things that we need to do, and we'll go over those in our other slides as our committees are taking these into consideration. So I want to update you on some of the work of our health committees, not all of them, or of our committees, not all of them this evening. Some of them are still have a long way to go in their work, and I'll be bringing those back to you at the next board meeting. So here's some of the ones that I will be updating you on this evening. First is our Public Health Committee. There are our school nurses and healthcare providers, but also community doctors and nurses and such on this committee with a variety of perspectives. But we know, again, that we have to follow guidelines as given to us by the medical profession. The recommendations, and some of this is very controversial, is that students and staff wear cloth face coverings, that they're strongly recommended. We know that for some staff, that's not going to work. If you're doing speech therapy, you need to see how people's lips move. If you're teaching young children phonics or English learners how to speak, you need to help them. So we may have to use face shields in some cases. There's talking about room dividers, especially like sneeze guards in food service areas, office areas, that kind of thing. Recommendations for individually packaged food instead of hot lunches that are served up on a tray, that people eat in their classrooms or outdoors, because we're not supposed to mix social groups. So we don't want mixing of people in the cafeteria area or other large indoor spaces. That there's daily self-checks. So we teach families and students how to monitor temperatures, look for indicators that they might be ill and then they wouldn't come to school. We do have scanning thermometers for all of our sites. We need to think about separate health offices for not just the routine health care, but if somebody is symptomatic, a place where we can have them stay until a family member is able to pick them up and take them home and get them the care they need. And then a lot of health education and guidance for all of our staff, our students, and our families, limiting visitors and volunteers at the sites, physical distancing, again, inside and out. I did learn today from Superintendent of Tulare County Office of Education, Tim Heyer, that the California Office of Emergency Services is stocking up to give us 60-day supplies of certain pieces of equipment. Those will be given to the county offices, and then they will be distributing them to the schools. So what we were told today, and again, this could all change, is that we would get 4 masks per student, 2 disposable and 2 cloth, so that they could alternate days with cloth. We would get 4 no-touch thermometers per school. Child care centers would get a couple as well. Masks and face shields for staff, and some hand sanitizer for each school site, 3 gallons, which probably won't last very long, but it would go to help us. So that was the news as of just this morning, that the county offices of education would be through the state sort of brokering those supplies for us. So that will help us on our budget. It certainly isn't going to take care of all the needs we're going to have for hand sanitizers and face masks and such. We have to also think about there's families in our district and in our valley, you know, people have asthma and other things that prohibit or make it difficult to wear a face mask for any length of time. Young children, usually they maybe get dirtier than they stay clean. So it's not a one size fits all, and we're going to have to work through that. But this public health committee is working on that. Next, we have our sanitation committee, and they have been working hard to procure a lot of alcohol hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes. They're exploring options because we were afraid that there might be a shortage of disinfectant wipes and things, as other types of options like pre-treated, microfiber towels for classrooms. There's going to be ongoing cleaning during the day that in the traditional school setting, we didn't do, like constant cleaning of doorknobs, restrooms, drinking fountains, things that get cleaned usually in a normal school time, you know, once or twice a day, but not as much as we need to. We're going to have to be moving furniture around, as probably moving some chairs out of classrooms and rearranging furniture to help the students maintain that 6 feet of social distancing in the classroom. We've started our summer cleaning early. We're going to have to do things a little bit differently. A lot of times our cleaning crews report and come together to a school site in a van. We're going to have to look at not doing that. There's items that are difficult to sanitize, cloth items, you know, stuffed animals in classrooms, pillows, beanbag chairs that aren't vinyl, all of those things. We're probably going to have to move those out for a while so that things can be sanitized easy. And they are suggesting also that we open up windows and doors to the outside when possible to allow extra outside air ventilation. That will probably be very difficult to maintain our AC and heating units by doing that. And then the cost could also escalate. So there's some things we have to look at and balance. In the picture there, you'll see one of the disinfectors. So disinfectant is used, and that is I forget the name of it, but custodial crews can go in and very quickly mist a room or an area and sanitize it pretty rapid. So we're going to be ordering those for all of our schools as well, so they have those available. So that's our sanitation committee. Again, a lot more details to work out, an overview of the things they're discussing and where they are at this moment. We also have a committee working on family and community engagement. They sent out the survey to our families and students who are grade 5 and above. That survey will be open until June 21st. We've had about little over 5,000 people respond to it. That's not enough out of our 35,000. So we're going to put out some community messaging tomorrow and reinforce that we want parents to respond to that. This is sort of a baseline survey. And from that, we'll know then which questions we need to ask on our next survey to get more information and go deeper. We know that some parents, even if we open up hybrid or full traditional, what we call normal school, we have some families that are not going to send their children to school. So we're trying to get a sense of how many would keep their children back at home. And we need to have distance learning options for those students. This committee is also going to be meeting through distance, you know, like Zoom and such, with parent groups and other community groups. They're exploring technology training for families. How can we support families who struggle with multiple platforms of technology coming into their home? And how can we support the families and the students if we're in a hybrid model or they're full distance some of the time? How can we support those families so that they can have a schedule and work with their children at home to make it productive and comfortable for everybody? So that committee is working on those items. Next, we have a committee that's working on student engagement and support services. So the other committee was family and community. This is really focusing on the needs of our students. And we are well aware that there's a lot of social emotional issues that people are going through, a lot of anxiety about the future, a lot of frustration, a sense of isolation, not being with their peers, their friends, their teachers. It's been difficult on students as well as adults, staff, and parents and everybody in general. This has been a very difficult situation. And so when our students return to school, there's going to need to be a lot of support available for them, time in the school day to debrief about how people are feeling. And, you know, we're going to need to support our staff so that they can support our students through that. So a lot of work in this committee is about building relationships. That's number one, that's key. As bad as it was that we had to shut down schools this year, at least the teacher and the student had a large chunk of time before we shut down to build a community in their classroom. Well, starting off the school year and then not having everybody together makes it a little bit difficult. So building relationships is key, setting up routines for students while they're at school, as well as while they're learning at home. And then we want to help students be resilient, and we want to be empathetic. Many of our families and our students have been working a lot during the shutdown. And many of our students became the primary childcare providers for their families while their parents had to go to work. So how do we support them so they can juggle learning at home? Well, maybe they're caring for some younger siblings. That's not an easy task. So we have to just be mindful of all of that. Next, we have our technology committee, who is working on several things. And many of them we've talked about before, but our technology for internet services, our towers that we're putting in, we are worried a little bit about some delays in procuring equipment. The first installation will be at the district office, and the equipment is ordered for the 9 other schools. We're prepping those for installation, but as a safety net, we've ordered 4,000 Verizon hotspots. We're joining LA Unified School District's contract and doing that so they can help us build a private network. Even after we have full coverage around our district, we know there will be some areas of the district that are not fully covered perhaps by the towers, and then we'll use the supplemental hotspots. Verizon does not require a long-term contract, so we're not stuck with the 4,000 in the long term. The Chromebooks, I've reported on this a couple times now, but just to reiterate, we have the 29,000 Chromebooks that are now cataloged. Again, we couldn't hand those out before. They were not cataloged like a library book, so we didn't have a mechanism to check them out. We also needed power cords for them to let students take home. So we have those now ready to go. The committee is working on logistics to distribute those back out to schools. We've also ordered 7,000 new Chromebooks, and those will have touch screens for the K1 to make it easier for them when they're reading storybooks and such. And we have set up a support hotline with technicians. So that's something that we're going to need to look up into beefing up in the future, so that when students and families have trouble accessing the technology, that we have a helpline and support for them. Let's see, and then we have our instructional scheduling model options. If you look at the California Department of Ed, they're looking at many of the same scenarios that we have been exploring. So we have subcommittees looking into 6 different scenarios. There's staff and students, parents on all of those. We've asked the committees to reach out to the school sites and to make sure that we have coverage from all areas in the district, so that it's equally covered, and that we also have elementary, middle, and high school coverage, and that the groups are diverse. So that's something that we have asked all of our committees to consider as they ask parents to join. We are exploring options for secondary school. Elementary, it's pretty feasible to explore options that do not require a lot of cross-contamination. But when you look at secondary schools that change, class periods, we're looking at options to minimize that. So maybe longer periods, and you go to half your periods one day and half your class periods the next day. All of that are things that are being explored. There's nothing set in stone yet. We'll be working with our associations to work through that as well. So again, everybody's brainstorming right now, like on what is the best. And again, we just got the guidelines yesterday from the State Department of Ed. So a lot of fresh new information. All of this, we're planning all these different scenarios, but everything is contingent on statutory changes. We do not have yet authorization from the state to go forth and change instructional minutes, to change the number of days that a student is sitting in a classroom. And so to implement any of these alternative plans requires some changes from the state of California. We hope to know that by Friday or Monday, but we'll see. We again know that some families may choose only learning at home for whatever health concerns their student may have, or extended family members that they don't want to risk exposure. And we also know that our extra and co-curricular activities, whether it's band, choir, drama, FFA, athletics, and such, have to also follow the state guidelines. So we're working through that as well. Then the next areas I'm going to update you on very briefly, because we'll get more in depth at our June 23rd board meeting, is the instructional technology pieces. We talked about the technology as far as hardware, computers, towers, hotspots, but this is where it gets into the instructional side of thing. So we have our English language arts and mathware software committees, excuse me. They have looked so far at 13 different options. And some of the things that they're requiring is that it must have a screener, so a pre-assessment and other formative assessments to give feedback to the student and to the teacher as they're using the software. Allow for independent learning. This would be supplemental to the teachers teaching and learning with the students directly. And the committee members there then will be reaching out to families because they want to get end user input. Some of these software programs we've used in the district before and some of them not. Other subject areas, more in the secondary and stuff, are exploring Edgenuity, UC Scout options that may also be supplementary to the regular core instruction from the teacher. We're also looking at learning management systems. Again, we'll have more on this for you at the next board meeting, but just as an overview, the learning management system is a shell for instruction and information. We hope that we can find one that dovetails with our Power School Student Information Center. So they're exploring various systems, and they're also reaching out to families for input. And then we're looking at the communication video instruction, looking at different options there. We have Zoom Pro, which is not the regular Zoom, but an upgrade that we pay for, and it's being piloted by 12 of our summer school teachers in the area of mathematics at the high school. So we'll get some good feedback there and see what kind of features it has, if it's robust enough for us to feel comfortable using with our students. There was recently a report, just in the brand new consumer report, concerns about Zoom and other softwares that allowed this video communication on selling data. So again, we want to make sure we have agreements with companies that they will not sell our student data, that we protect privacy. Again, we have our survey out to collect some baseline data, and then we will put out more survey to get more information as we need it to go further in depth so we can have the best planning possible. So where we are right now as a county is we're in a kind of a difficult spot. We are one of, and I don't know if you can see it right now on your PowerPoint, but there's 8 counties in the state of California that are targeted. We're one of them, and so is Fresno and Kings. And that means that we're having difficulty over 14-day periods meeting all of the requirements to move into the next phase. So we're kind of on a watch list, so to speak. I've given you the total number of confirmed cases. We're over 2,000 in our county now with 94 deaths. That's as of last night. So while we're planning to go in a certain direction, which we think right now is the hybrid model, we have to be really cognizant of the fact that we don't call all the shots. We have to work within the parameters that were given again by the state and county health official. We're going to do everything that we possibly can to reopen as robust as we are allowed to and keep our students and staff safe, knowing that there's no 100% guarantees. And just like if students come to school, they could catch a cold or chickenpox or something else. You know, we can't 100% prevent the spread of COVID at our schools, but we can do our darn best to make sure that we've put everything into place we can to keep our staff and our students and our community safe. And so I use this graphic because we think we're going in the hybrid model, and that's where we're going to plan for right now. But we're still going to keep our contingencies open and plan for a full traditional return to school, as well as perhaps we're going to have to pull back. So it's hard to live with ambiguity and not feeling like we're in control of everything and we get to do just what we want, but that's pretty much where we're at. So at the next board meeting, I will give you an update, and perhaps we'll have some of our committees, especially in the instructional technology area, present to you depending on the amount of time we have allotted and the other items on the agenda. But we'll keep you updated as we go along. And if there's any questions from the board, be happy to answer those.
Is there any public comment? While we're waiting for public comment, I'll ask for board member comments.
We have a caller.
We have a caller, okay?
Caller, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brittany Christensen, and I am a parent of VUSD students. I'm calling to express my serious concern about what is being suggested as the most likely scenario for when schools open back up, namely a 2-day-a-week schedule for each child to attend school in person, with the other days being distance learning. In recent weeks, students and their families have expressed how strongly we wish for a traditional school model and how distance learning does not work for most of our families. With that in mind, I would like to simply ask a few questions. Is this hybrid model being chosen in order to save money due to our district's increased deficit? Would district administrators consider taking a pay cut to allow for more staff positions to keep our schools functional? What are the parameters for opening fully again? Is the county health department going to give us specific guidance on this? How are parents and guardians who work full-time supposed to accommodate distance learning now that other sectors are fully returning to work? What about our teachers and staff and our healthcare workers who have full-time jobs? If planning on providing on-site enrichment outside of school hours for children whose parents work, why not simply have all children at school learning? Can this be accommodated by holding classes in cafeterias, gymnasiums, libraries, outdoors, or other non-classroom spaces? How much will contracting with these enrichment programs cost? Is the technology necessary for distance learning going to be up and running in time for the start of school in August? What is going to happen if it isn't? Where will we be able to find the results of the survey that was sent to families last week asking what preferences are for school opening? Why is a staggered start time considered less feasible than keeping kids on distance learning the majority of the week? If we are willing to consider a hybrid model anyway, why not allow students and staff the choice to attend in person, and those who are at risk or uncomfortable to choose to utilize distance learning? And finally, couldn't liability concerns as discussed by the board last meeting be mitigated by having families sign waivers absolving VUSD of all liability related to COVID, much like students do for field trips and school sports? State Superintendent Thurman has repeatedly emphasized that opening will ultimately be up to each school district and acknowledged that distance learning is not possible for all families and students. Fresno Unified Superintendent Nelson is giving families a choice, stating, "Stay home and we'll provide you a robust digital learning option, or come and we will do everything to make sure safety above everything else." But for a lot of families, they really don't have a lot of wherewithal to make digital learning function and function well. This applies to families in our district as well. Fresno, double our size, is allowing students and families to choose which model they want to follow and accommodating that choice. Can't our district commit to doing the same? As of today, there have been 0 COVID-related deaths in the population of 0 to 17-year-olds in the entire state of California, 0. Is depriving our children of their educational opportunities really worth it considering the risks are so low? Hybrid and distance learning models will simply not work for most families in our district. Many children don't have the support at home to make it work. We must open our schools back up. You have the ability to do so. The state is giving leeway in cases where distance learning is not feasible. That is the case in Visalia. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, caller.
Do we have other public comment?
Caller, go ahead.
Thank you, board members, for allowing public comment. My name is Will Hobbs, and I have a student at Redwood High School.
Mr. Hobbs,
student-
I hear some feedback. Do you have your computer on?
I do, but I will turn it off. So having students who've attended Visalia Unified and having coached and volunteered for years in the district, we're very invested in the support and success of our community and our public school. I know that many of these decisions are out of your hands, and I appreciate, Superintendent, your detailed description of kind of the protocols. Similar to what the previous caller said, you know, there have been 126 total deaths of young people under the age of 24 due to COVID. It is much more dangerous for our students to drive in a car to school than it is to get to school and get contract a virus. So I would just affirm that any return to capacity, if it's at all possible, that would be my vote. I know that I haven't taken a statistically significant research of friends and family, but I don't know anyone who would affirm a stay-at-home model for instruction. I do understand that there's families who have elderly family members and immunocompromised family members, and so certainly we need to address that. But I think the possibility to return to school in a traditional model, and Superintendent, as you said, the most robust measures possible, that would be my vote and the vote of all my family and friends that I've spoken with about this. So I would also add that I believe the questions on the survey were poorly worded to ask, are you comfortable with something? Am I comfortable with 2 students in a classroom? Yes, I'm comfortable with that, but I'm not satisfied with that. I'm more and desirous of a full classroom with students because I don't think there's risk to young people. So I vote for full classrooms if at all possible. I realize our hands are tied by state and county decision makers, but to the degree that we can be open as much as possible. That's my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Other public comment?
Caller, go ahead.
Hi, yes. Good evening, school board and Dr. Raveling. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
I can hear you, but there's some feedback in the background. Is your computer on?
Yes, it is. Let me go to a different location. Hold on.
Thank
you. Okay, is that better?
That is better.
Okay. All right. Good evening, school board and Dr. Raveling. My name is Juliana Mathias, and I am a parent of a VUSD student and advocating for all VUSD school employees as well, especially the classified staff. I feel that by keeping our schools closed and possibly going to a hybrid model, will not only be doing our students a disservice, but the staff as well. My son is suffering with fear, anxiety, depression, not being able to socialize or engage with other classmates. This is a lot for an elementary student to be battling with. How are parents supposed to tell their employers that they need to leave at a certain time because we need to pick up our students from school because of students possibly attending half day? This will definitely impact me and my family as I am a single mother, not to mention who is going to watch my child on the days that he may not be going to school. Next, the staff reducing and eliminating hours and positions places a hardship on employees, especially during this COVID situation. There are several employees out there that are single parents, possibly working to provide, and now especially if you go with a hybrid model, some of those staff may possibly lose hours, pay, or even be laid off due to the lack of irresponsibility of finances. How about make it fair and allow the teachers and management to take a hit, like the classified employees got hit already in March? You will definitely be saving more by doing this. Let's be fair and take all into consideration. Up until this point, I don't feel, and I know along with other parents, that we feel the same way that parents have had our voices heard. Is this hybrid model being placed to cover the deficit that we are in?
We need to take all families' lifestyles into consideration. Fresno County is taking surveys and asking parents what they prefer. How about give us parents what Fresno is doing? Give us surveys out to parents and see what the parents choose. If they choose to allow their kids to go full-time, allow those parents to send their kids full-time. The ones that choose to have their kids at home, distance learning, allow them to. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. Is there other public comment?
Caller, go ahead.
Yes, I have, my name is Lisa Frankie. I have two students in Visalia Unified. I have one that is a SLC student and one that is a general education, going to be 5th grade student. They attend different schools and my husband and I work full time. These hybrid models that you were suggesting, am I guaranteed that my children are going to go on the same days at the same time? How am I going to accommodate that with work? Also, who gets to go to what class? My son that's in an SLC class is on an IEP. Does he get priority over my 5th grade student who needs to also be in class? How will you support working families after school and non-school days? I'm just asking because there are many people in our community that are affected by this. A lot of us work, they're single parents. There are intact families that both work full time, and I'm just not sure that that's going to work out with our jobs very well. And that's my question to you guys. Thank you very much for taking my comment.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. Other comments?
Caller, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to turn off my computer now.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Rebecca Abbott, and I just have a couple comments after listening here. The first one was, I know you mentioned how to get more parents out with the survey that you would put out online, and I wonder if there's a way you can reach out to the parents when they pick up food, if that would be possible for them to get a paper survey they can turn in or a flyer so they can know to turn it in, because I know maybe we're not reaching all the parents via email. Also, my other thought was, if you do have to go online, or even if you're doing people in person and some online, just another reiteration, just to please allow teachers to be the core instruction and not a packet, not a computer program, but that we need teachers. And so there needs to be a way, if you have some kids at school, the ones that are doing online also need to be reached by an actual person teaching them. I feel like that is so important to all our students. And then my last thought was, please, as you are making all these plans, consider being creative, especially with your extracurricular, with sports and with band and with choir. I know that may not be easy inside a classroom, but please be creative in allowing those to continue, because those are so vital to so many of our students to keep that in their life. Whether you have those classes after school hours to accommodate the amount of students, or just a way to make those possible, because sports and music and those extracurriculars are so important to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you for those comments. Other public comment?
Caller, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, you are now providing public comment. Go ahead.
This is Coffin Moore. I have two students in Visalia Unified School District, one at Oak Grove and one at Ridgeview. And I have been a teacher for 26 years. Based on my considerable experience in the classroom, I'm going to make free to say that there is absolutely no substitute for direct instruction in a traditional classroom setting. And I'm extremely concerned about our current situation, of course. I realize that there are a number of challenges that need to be overcome in order to return our children to a traditional classroom setting in the fall. But I think that it's absolutely essential that we do everything in our power to address those challenges successfully and ensure that our children are in fact able to return to school to a traditional classroom setting with direct instruction as soon as possible. And this is important not only for the sake of their academic development, but also their personal and social and emotional growth. This whole situation has been extremely taxing for children throughout Visalia, and of course, throughout the entire nation. And it needs to be addressed as expediently as possible, and we need to return to the quote unquote normal paradigm as soon as possible. That's pretty much all I got for you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, no more
Yes.
calls.
All right, thank you. First, I'd like to thank again the public that did call in and comment. The board does sympathize with all of these issues, and most of them have been discussed already. But please understand, and I think most of you do, what we have to work with in trying to go back to school. I think if it was up to several of us on the board, we'd all go back to full school right now, because we completely agree that's a kid's life and that's a parent's life when their kids are in school and they're working. We get that, and we want to make that happen in every way we can, but we have to be smart and we have to be safe. So thank you again for your comments. Do I have any board member comments? No further comments? Very good. This is for information only. All right, this is the time for board member reports. Remembering that board member reports are for school and community related subjects. Ms. Gamoyan.
Last week, I attended all the high school graduations. And I also attended Valley Oak graduation. And I want to say that those were absolutely fabulous. I want to just do a little thank you list. I want to thank the high school principals who stood there and handed out diplomas and awards to every one of their kids. Each kid got a special interaction with the principal. I want to thank the feeder school principals who were there cheering the kids on with this great cheerleading section. The teachers were amazing at these high schools, and as also at Valley Oak, cheering their kids. Like, they would come around and there'd be groups of teachers, and it was really cool how each school did their own slant on graduation. I'd like to thank the police department that was there, Officer Diltz, the sergeant, the head of the YDOs, just making sure everything was safe. The city of Visalia and our own Jerry Lemus, the traffic flow was amazing. And it was just the most wonderful thing to witness. I want to thank the parents, the kids. There was such joy on their face. And most of all, I want to thank Mr. Mike Waters. You did a great job. Thank you. It was a wonderful, wonderful week.
Trustee Foster.
Hang on one moment. Okay, Mr. Foster, start now.
I did go to several graduation celebrations of individual students. One of them, of course, I watched was Mr. Fulmer's granddaughter. Let me tell you, the students today are better. They're better educated. They were great ceremonies from when I saw the pictures. I want to say that the superintendent's direction was the right decision, and that I listened to the survey yesterday that 500 million people could have been infected over 6 countries if it hadn't been for the guidelines that we have been given. So I know that she made the right decision, and I sleep very peacefully knowing that decision. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trustee Fulmer.
Yeah, I didn't stay at any of the graduations. I just went by to see how it looked, and what I saw was very positive. And I had not all that many people, but a number of people take time to tell me that they were very pleased with the way the graduation went. So congratulations to our staff. That's all.
Trustee Vasquez.
Yes, everything I've heard about the graduations was just wonderful. People really got a chance to have a memorable experience. So hats off to the staff. I know there was a lot of tension, and I know there was a lot of anticipation, and so thank you to the staff and the students and the parents. But really, you guys really pulled it off. People seem to be very pleased with a very memorable experience in a very difficult time. Congratulations, class of 2020. Also, thank you, Dr. Ravelin, for that update of COVID. There are so many moving parts, so I think you really were able to give us an insight on each one of those committees, and really have a better insight on specifics. And I'm hoping that the parents heard that we have the same concerns that they do, just as President Crabtree stated. Oh, there was a couple of questions on cheerleader tryouts and when that might happen. I have no idea how we're going to do sports or if that's even an issue. So again, this is early in the game. I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, we can get reports from some of the other committees and have clear understanding of that. But really, I want to thank the parents for being patient and being involved, and really understanding that we hear them. And if there's many moving parts and there's many things to take into consideration. And we do want the most robust education for our children, but we also want to be safe. And we do have to follow regs, and we do what we can. But really, hats off to all the staff that's been working so hard on the graduations and on the committees. And people are asking, how do I get on a committee? So if you could also put that information out so people know that they can even offer themselves. I know that the committees have done, put a lot of effort into making sure that they have parents and teachers from different regions. But I know that there are a lot of people who would like to at least throw their names in the hat. So if we could publicize how they might be able to do that again, those are some of the questions I'm getting. But thank you very much, everyone.
Trustee Naylor.
Yeah, I too, thank all the staff for the graduations. I unfortunately could not be at any of them due to some unforeseen circumstances in my family. I was in another state, but I did get to see the pictures. Thank you for sending all those pictures. And I just want to really appreciate the staff and everybody who worked to coordinate the graduation. I also want to, the community, we hear you. I appreciate the public comment. I too, we all want we would love to have a full return to the traditional school site, but again, we want them to be safe at the same time. So we are working through that. I just want to assure you of that we do hear you. We do not just listen to you and not think, oh, that's just another comment. We take every comment and every email very, very to heart and want to work out the problems and try to do the best we can. I do want to encourage everyone, the community, parents and students, to please take the survey. It is on the VUSD website. There is a portion, because I looked through it, there is a portion at the end where you can put your comment. I know that some of the questions might not, as Mr. Hobbs said, not be as specific as he wants, but you know what, there is a place for comment. So please, please, please fill the surveys out so we can get more input. And that's it for mine.
Trustee Guerrero.
Yeah, I also want to extend my congratulations to all the students who graduated and went through the graduations. You know, staff did a fantastic job. It was difficult. We didn't know how all this was going to work out. Like Bill, I didn't go to all, but I was observing. I parked and I looked at the traffic and how they were lined up and all the balloons and all the kids and decorations on the cars. And so I think one of the board members mentioned Valley Oak. That line wrapped around all the way to Golden West. So yeah. Um, I want to echo what Joy Naylor said, and what she said is real important is that um, we do listen to the public comment and we do read the emails, and these are sometimes we're caught between a rock and a hard place, and we're trying to make the best decisions possible, but just to reassure the parents that we are listening, and we're trying to make the best decisions possible. What I'm concerned with this hybrid model is all the working parents. Geez, when we're talking about all this, it reminded me of year-round school and what year-round school was like. And if you have one kid in elementary, another in high school, I had kids in elementary, junior high, and high school, and that was during year-round school. And that was part of the reason that I ran for the school board, is that just the difficulty in managing that, or even taking a vacation as a family together. And especially if you're working, single parents and whatnot, working parents, is very difficult. So I'd like to hear more about that as we move along, because it's going to be difficult for some of these parents of childcare and whatnot, and I'm concerned about that. But just to reassure the public and the parents that I think every board member here reads all those emails, and we listen to you, and we're listening to public comment. And sometimes, it's just been very difficult this year. It's I've never seen it before, So anyway, those are just my comments right now. That was my report. Thank you.
Thank you. My report is, like everybody else is saying, the staff did an outstanding job of putting this graduation thing together. And I think the biggest percentage of the graduates and their families were quite surprised in what they did get in graduation ceremonies. And it was kind of fun to watch. I didn't spend the full 5 hours at every high school, but I spent at least 2 or 3. And it was enjoyable. I stood out on the sidewalk more than 6 feet away from the cars and congratulated the students as they drove by. It was very interesting the way the traffic flowed. The cars would come in, the student would get out of the car, walk down their red carpet or their green carpet or whatever it was, meet the principal, and then get back in the car and get their pictures taken. And all along the way, these students, because so many were fearing that they wouldn't get the pictures that they wanted, this was far better than they would have ever gotten out of the grandstands, because as they drove with their student walking the carpet, they were all taking movies, and then they were snapping pictures too. So I would say there was plenty of photographs being taken. Anyway, again, thank you to the staff for doing such an outstanding job. And I do have the confidence in you that you will do the absolute best that you can to get our students back to school safely. So thank you. Dr. Allen, do you have a report?
I want to echo much of what has already been said, but I'd be remiss not to thank the people who really put their heart and soul into those graduation and promotion ceremonies. And so first of all, I want to thank Mike Waters, who headed up much of the committee and worked very closely, especially with the high school, but also with the middle school principals to make those ceremony specials. The high school staffs did an amazing job, much like our traditional graduation ceremonies, where each school has sort of a unique spin on it. All of them were a little bit different, but they really went above and beyond to make it special for the graduates and their families. Also want to thank Jerry Lemus, who worked very closely with the City of Visalia staff, and Public Works Department did an outstanding job, as many of you noted, and the traffic control and laying out the cones so that there was plenty of room for our families in the traffic lanes, and they were out of the way so traffic could continue, but they had a special lane, graduates only kind of places to go. And the police department was fabulous. And they've always been great partners with our school district, and we continue to work cooperatively with them on many venues, but they were extraordinary for supporting us through the graduations. As we continue on the COVID planning, we do take all of the people who are interested in being on our committees. Assistant Superintendent Cardoza has a list of those. And so as we get those names, we add them to the list. Many of our committees already have parents, and they're already full out of like 30 plus people. So we don't have a lot of room. Large committees are difficult, but they will be doing additional outreach. So we want to have all those names of anybody who is interested, so we know if you are, that we can potentially reach out to you as well. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Enclosure number 20, collective bargaining agreement between Visalia Unified School District and Visalia Unified Teachers Association for 2020-2023. Ms. Somavia.
Good evening, board members, President Crabtree, and Dr. Evelyn. Thank you for giving me this time tonight. I am pleased to bring to you the tentative agreement between the Visalia Unified School District and the Visalia Unified Teachers Association. Before I outline what is inside the TA, I just want to sincerely thank Patrick Hempel, the lead negotiator for Visalia Unified Teachers Association, Greg Price, who is the president of the association, and the rest of the VUTA team, and my team as well. In the midst of a lot of uncertainty with budget and with school, we were able to come together and come fairly quickly to a tentative agreement that both sides felt was fair in light of what's going on. So just a huge thank you to the entire team for working so well together. I'm just gonna go through and basically bullet point what is inside that tentative agreement. The district will be funding a step and column increase for our teachers. There is no COLA this year, as we all know. There will be one day reduced from all teachers' contracts. We agreed that that would be the professional development day on February 8th. This is a day when classified already has a holiday that day and students are not in session, so there's no negative impact to students. There is an increase in our healthcare this year, and so we agreed to share those costs so equally between Visalia Unified Teachers Association and the district. We also agreed to adjust our class size averages. So we'll be moving up 1 or increasing 1 in the average for all grade levels. Again, that's an average. It's not per classroom necessarily. We did write into that tentative agreement that we know that the budget is rapidly evolving, and that if there is any significant increase or decrease, that we would return to the table to continue negotiating, whether we get an increase of funds or a significant decrease from where we're at right now. And so I ask that we open this up for comment by the board and also the public, and I'm asking for a vote on this tonight.
Is there any public comment?
One moment. No myself.
Mr. Crabtree, there's no calls at this time.
Do I have a motion to ratify this contract?
Motion to ratify.
I have a motion from Mr. Guerrero and a first. I have a second by Mr. Fulmer. Mr. Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero, yours is a yes. Mr. Fulmer?
Yes.
Trustee Gamoyen?
Yes.
Trustee Naylor?
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez?
Yes.
And mine is a yes vote. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Moving
Mr.
on.
Crabtree. Before we move on, I just would like to add that we will bring back to you next week. We anticipate similar reductions for management staff, both classified and certificated. So we'll be bringing that to the June 23rd board meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
moving on to number 21, declaration of need for fully qualified educators. Ms. Somavia.
Thank you. So this is a yearly declaration that we provide. Basically, this is outlining to the state of California, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, how many teachers that we anticipate that will be either on an emergency permit or on some sort of waiver. And so on one of the pages, it outlines how many we anticipate. Again, it's not a hard number because we're still hiring, but we anticipate the need to put several teachers on an English learner authorization. That's known as the CLAD or bilingual authorization, depending on if you have your credential or not. And then it also outlines the number of teachers that we anticipate putting on an emergency credential in each area, outlining multiple subjects, single subject, and special education. So this is, we have to report this each year to CTC and outline our diligence in trying to find fully credentialed teachers.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
So moved.
Second.
I have
There
a,
is no public comment.
thank you. I have a motion by Dr. Vasquez, a second by Mr. Guerrero. Mr. Guerrero's vote is a yes. Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Fulmer,
Yes.
Mr. Trustee Gamoyen,
Yes.
Trustee Naylor,
Yes.
Dr. Vasquez,
Yes.
and mine is a yes. It's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to enclosure number 22. This is, I'm opening a public hearing. This is a first reader resolution to adopt level 2 residential and commercial developer fees based on 2020 school facilities needs analysis. Axel Condon, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Board President Crabtree, Superintendent Raveline, members of the board and of the community. My name is Axel Kondo. I'm the internal auditor for the Visalia Unified School District. And I would like to present to you the highlight and findings of the school facility need analysis that was prepared by Capital Public Finance Group, or Capital PFG, and answer any question that you may have. So today's meeting, there is no action from the board that will be needed. It's just for information only. Also, I would like to let you know that we have posted in the Visalia Time Delta on May 22nd, and also yesterday, we have posted a public notice so that members of the public are aware of this meeting. And we have also shared the report with the city and the county. I've shared it with them back on April 29, and also the Building Industry Association. I've also shared our report with them in the first week of May. So let me go on. Oops. Okay, so, excuse me, I'm about to share my screen right now. Okay. Okay. So why are we performing the school facility need analysis? So every year, the state allocation board get together and adjust developer fees by the inflation. So back in January 22nd of this year, they got together and they adjusted the level 1 fees. So the new level 1 fee for 2020 is $4.08 for residential, and it's 66 cents per square foot. Both of them are per square foot for commercial and industrial. However, for most school districts, the level 1 fee is not always enough to be able to cover some of the costs from facilities as a result of new development. So the government code also allows school district to collect what is called alternative fee, which are level 2 and level 3 fee that exceed the level 1. And that's what the school facility need analysis is for. Basically, we have a third party looking into the district data and city and county data to be able to determine what fee the Visalia Unified can legitimately charge to developer for the impact on the school facilities. Okay, so when talking about those fees, the level 1 fees, as I said, they are based on inflation rate. So, they could go up and down every even year, depending on what the inflation was. The level 2 fees are aimed to be able to cover about 50%, roughly about 50% of what the impact of new development would be on school facilities per square foot. And basically, in all those cases, developer fees are essentially a vehicle by which developer can contribute to school facility based on the impact that new development will have on those facilities. Okay. So in order to have to be able to show a level 2 fees, there are different qualifications that a school district might meet. One of them is that a school facility need analysis is required, and there are also 4 statutory requirements that the state placed that you have to meet 2 out of the 4 in order to be eligible for level 2 fees. Level 3 fees are only triggered when the state no longer has matching fund for new school construction, but it's not available at this time, and it's not something that that we have recommended in the past. So, but I thought I would show everything. Okay, so as far as those criteria, the 4 statutory criteria, the 2 that were met really easily were the district did pass a general obligation bond. So measure A was within the last 4 years. So that's one of the requirements. Another of the requirements is that you have to have at least 20% of your district classroom in relocatable classroom. So Visalia Unified also met that particular requirement. So that's the 2 out of the 4. We could have met more, but they just stop at those 2. So basically, school facility need analysis is a look at a specific school district, and contrary to the level 1 fees, it is basically what is appropriate for your specific school district. So the school facility need analysis and the result of it for Visalia Unified will be most likely different from, let's say, Dinuba or a different school district. So the way it works is that we looked at the past 5 years as far as enrollment, development, and they projected forward. So this is what Capital PFG looked at, as well as the cost of new facilities acquisition. So, okay. In more details, here you could see that the Capital PFG project about 2,980 new residential units within the city's boundaries over the next 5 years. And that amount to about 5.5 million square foot. So when they look at the number of new residential units, then they also look at what they call the student generation rate, which is based on the prior 5 years enrollment, as well as cities and county permits, new construction permits. So based on that, they come up with the generation rate, and the generation rate is basically what allowed them to come up with a number of students that will be generated from those new residential units. So based on that, they find 1,558 students. So out of those 1,558 students, 1,103 students will be unhoused students. So meaning that Visalia Unified, as it stands right now, wouldn't have enough capacity going forward to be able to accommodate for all those students. And those students are mainly in elementary and high school. That's where those students are. So from that, they basically generate the ratio, which is 1.14 that's needed for K through 6, and 0.2 that's needed as far as new facility for high schools. And with that, you get what, and adding the state grants per student, the pupil-based grants, you get 23.1 million in unfunded allowable facility cost. So when you divide those by the total square footage, that's what gives you the $4.16 per square foot. That's the level 2 residential fee that Capital PFG came up with. So those are some of the allowable use of developer fees. So Visalia Unified used developer fees mainly for elementary school, to build elementary school, and also to improve current site capacity, acquiring portables, and other things like that, as you can see on the allowable list. So as far as the result of the analysis is that Visalia Unified will be able to justifiably assess $4.16 per square foot for residential, 66 cents per square foot for commercial, and 23 cents per square foot for self-storage. And that's as a result of the analysis by Capital PFG. And the 66 cents is basically the same as the number that that the state came up with for starting in 2020, the same as what it would be for commercial anyhow, and the $4.16 are for residential. The self-storage have a lower fee because they have a lower student generation rate. So that's why they have a lower fee. Okay, so on this slide, you can see over school district in the region that are currently assessing level 2 fees. Visalia Unified, what we have as far as like the $4.16 per square foot will be slightly more, like 3 cents more than what Lindsay Unified is currently assessing, but it will be much less than, you know, Dinuba or the other school districts that are assessing those fees. So as far as the next step, we will come again, I will come to you again on June 23rd, and that's when I will have the resolution for the new fees and ask the board to take action on that. The level 2 fees would be, if the board voted on it, the level 2 fees would be starting on July 1st, and the commercial will be starting on September 1st. So just to give you a perspective, at $4.16 per square foot for residential versus the $4.08 per square foot for residential, that would be level 1. The 8 cents difference, if you look at the 2,000 square foot house, it's a one-time fee on the new house of like $160. So that's essentially what it is.
Is there any public comment? Board member comments? Thank you, Mr. Gondo.
Oh, thank you.
Nice presentation.
Mr.
There is no public comment.
No, and Mr. Foster has a comment, please.
Oh, Mr. Foster.
The construction industry, what their input was and how they feel about this.
We can't hear what he's saying.
No, I heard him. I heard it was about, Mr. Brian Todd is the president of the Building Industrial Association. So I sent him the report, and I emailed him a couple of times and called, left you a few voicemail to let him know that if he had any question or any feedback or any concern, he can get back to me. But he hasn't contacted me back. But last time that I came to you back in December to present the fee collected in 1819, and I've done the same thing. And basically, Mr. Brian Todd's opinion was that he will let me know if he has any question or any concern. So I haven't heard from him, which I would assume is good news. So
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Other board member comments? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to enclosure number 23, resolution prescribing the terms and authorizing the issuance of bonds and approval of the form of related agreements. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, President Crabtree, members of the board, and Dr. Aveline. Nathan Hernandez again, and I don't have a PowerPoint for you tonight for this item. I did bring Matt Kolker from GFS along, and he is listening in case there's any questions for him to answer. Essentially, these next two items authorize the sale of the first series of Measure A bonds, as well as the repayment of those bonds through county property tax collections. The resolution authorizes several different legal documents that establish the trust and the paying agents for these bonds. And the second resolution sets or notifies the county treasurer that we will be sending them documents to set those tax rates. And so we've been discussing over the last several months the projects that would be performed with this first series of Measure A bonds. These are modernization projects that include science classrooms, security projects, as well as the initial cost on the high school design. So the first series is recommended at 35.7 million. That's what the resolution states. And these bonds would be issued through a competitive sale, and that would take place later this month. I think June 25th is the sale date expected. And then we would perform those first two phases of the modernization projects.
Okay, before I have any comment on this, I need to close that public hearing that we just held to make it official. All right, is there any board member comments on this item?
So moved.
Public comments?
Nope.
I have a motion by Dr. Vasquez, a second by Mr. Fulmer. Take the vote. Trustee Guerrero.
I'm sorry, are we voting on both of them at once or just the first one?
It's the first one.
I vote yes.
Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Trustee Fulmer,
Yes.
Trustee Gamoyen,
Yes.
Trustee Naylor,
Yes.
Trustee Vasquez, Dr. Vasquez.
Yes.
And I vote yes, it's unanimous. All right, moving on to our final enclosure, number 24, resolution to establish the tax rate for general obligation bonds. You want to do a quick, I told you so already?
Yeah, this is the resolution that does establish the repayment for the bonds that will be issued that were authorized with the last resolution.
So moved.
Or do I have any comments? I have a motion by Dr. Vasquez, a second by Mr. Fulmer. Your vote, Mr. Guerrero.
Yes.
Your vote, Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Fulmer.
Yes.
Ms. Gamoyen.
Yes.
Ms. Naylor.
Yes.
And Dr. Vasquez.
Yes.
And it's unanimous. My vote is yes. And that is all for this evening. Thank you all very much and have a good night and 2 weeks.